I'm sorry about that. I just lost my train of thought for a second. Now I have it back. In the scheme of things, I believe that we're all here for a reason. And the only reason that makes sense is to fulfill the partnership agreement of Tikkun Olam. It is not like an option, like, oh, please don't do this or please do this. This is a covenant between humanity and God. This is not a choice. There's no getting out of this contract, okay? This contract is forever. And so if a person has an opportunity to do a good thing in the world, why wouldn't they want to do it? You know, the Talmud also talks about acts of compassion, and it stipulates that in doing a good deed, it is the giver that should be grateful to the receiver, for they have created an opportunity for them to fulfill their part in Tikkun Olam. In other words, when someone comes to you, anyone comes to you and says, please help me, you should look at that person and, you know, if you care about that person, you should look at that person and say, wow, I have an opportunity to truly give to another human being something that they really need. If I were in your shoes, I would cherish that opportunity. I would see it as my opportunity to fulfill my end of the deal. And honestly, we have the better end of the deal over God. You know, the incredible feeling that a person gets, you know, when you do something nice for someone, it's like that feeling is addictive. You know, you just want to do it again and again and again. And there's a reason for that, because that is what we're here for. That's why doing it feels so wonderful. Not doing it is the part that's really confusing, because people who do not go down that path are defying their own nature. People who go down that path are allowing their nature to be the way they live their life. But anyway, in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Old Temple, the sacrificial process was a ruse. It had nothing to do with praising God. There's a million rules. You got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. This farmer, this much of their flock. There is a lot of rules, and the reason why there are so many rules is to cover up the real reason for the sacrificial process. It had nothing to do with God, except that we have to fulfill our covenant with God. It had to do with feeding the poor. The process of the sacrifice was very straightforward. The temple would put up a notice in the town square saying that there's going to be a sacrifice on whatever day. You know, come and honor us with your presence as a witness to the sacrifice. The witness to the sacrifice. Those are the poor, the hungry, the people who don't have any other means. That's who they are. And you know the notion of the meek shall inherit the earth. This is kind of along the same lines. So they made this big to-do, brought the animal, gave the guy who donated the animal all the accolades for doing his part, and then, like the Talmud says, that God only wants the blood and the fat, the very substances that if we consume them as human beings will make us sick, okay, or even harm us or kill us. So in the sacrificial process, God only wants the blood and the fat, which means the meat goes to feed everyone who witnesses the process. Because it was never one cow or one chicken. It was hundreds or even thousands of animals being slaughtered at one time in order to exalt the greatness of God. And if God is almighty, God deserves a huge sacrifice. Well, isn't that convenient that that very amount of animals, lamb or cow or whatever it is that they were sacrificing, the very amount that they had was the exact amount needed to feed the people who came to witness the sacrifice. Feed everyone in that square, because the square where the sacrifice was committed in the temple was exactly the size needed to accommodate all of Jerusalem. Every inhabitant of Jerusalem could have fit in there, which means that the sacrifice would have been proportionate to how many people were there, and subsequently everyone got fed. And everyone was fed with dignity. There was never any remote chance that they would feel disrespected. They felt like they were being honored, invited to the temple to witness the sacrifice, only so that they would have eyes on the sacrifice. And their presence was so important that they were being honored by this invitation. Meanwhile, in the reality of life, the entire process was meant to feed these people, to ensure they survive, and not only to feed their body, but to feed their soul, by not only preserving their dignity, but by treating them with the utmost respect. Today, when I went to the food bank, I was treated in that way. The person who dealt with me, a very nice older woman, was very sweet and very gentle, and she could see how uncomfortable I was, and she was very sensitive to it, and she gave me the feeling that she sees me as a human being, that I deserve respect and affection and compassion, and that she was happy that she could do it, that she could contribute her time, because these people are all volunteers. Nobody gets paid for this. They go to the food bank, and it's basically in a basement of a town hall here in the town that I live in. Companies, individuals, everyone donates to this food pantry so that people who don't have enough food can come there and get some food. And it's all proportionate based on how many people live in the house. Like, I don't need as much food as a family of 4, so I only get what I need. I certainly don't want to be an additional burden on the system, and I'm extremely grateful that it's there. I witnessed the human being, the dignity that was started in the temple with the sacrifice. That's why when we invite guests to our house, we thank them for coming. Because in reality, think about it. A guest comes to your house, they're eating your food, they're sitting on your furniture, they're watching your TV, they're in your presence. Okay, they should be thanking you, but we thank our guests when they come because we are saying to them, you are honoring me with your presence, and I want to repay the honor by serving you in my home. That entire custom of welcoming strangers or guests into your home is a derivative of the sacrifice in the temple. And when you stop and you look at the complexity of the sacrificial process, you realize that it was so overly complex in order to distract from the reality that its only purpose is to feed the hungry. Its only purpose is to feed their heart, their mind, and their heart, their mind, their soul, and their body, to keep them alive. A human being cannot just eat and survive. They have to grow emotionally and spiritually. And so the sacrifice became their participation in society. They felt important. They felt needed. And that does wonders for a person's psyche. And this is the way I live. This is the way I think. I can't be any other way. Anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts on what happened today, and I thought that you would find it interesting. And I guess if you don't, then you can always delete it, but I found it interesting. Anyway, I'll send another video soon.